In an old kitchen with white tiles yellowed with age, Lucia Rivera sits across from her stepmother. The small dining table is placed near the window, where sunlight filters through the iron bars, illuminating a plate of cold fried eggs and 2 slices of dry bread next to a glass of orange juice with a few seeds remaining. Elena sits at an angle, her hair in a carelessly high bun, stirring lightly with a spoon in a now cold coffee. "How's the graduation exam going?" she asks, her eyes fixed on the newspaper spread open on the table. Lucia shrugs, her eyes on the plate of eggs. "It's okay." "Don't just say okay. You know, the only way forward is through education." "I never stop studying," Lucia interrupts, softly but firmly. Elena raises an eyebrow but says nothing more. The meal ends quickly, each retreating into their own world, where they live together, but are as separate as 2 locked rooms. Around 3 in the afternoon, Lucia grabs her sketchbook, puts her pencil case in her cloth bag and slings her backpack over her shoulder. She calls out into the house, "I'm going to the park. I'll be back before 6. There's no response. Elena is watching television, a cooking show with the volume so loud it drowns out everything else. When she arrives at the park, she chooses a secluded spot near a moss-covered stone wall, sitting down on the brick floor. Her pencil quickly glides across the paper, the light and dark areas created by the layers of moss and the light filtering through the trees. The drawing gradually emerges, both old and sad. She doesn't notice the elderly man sitting on a park bench a few dozen meters away. He's smoking, his face hidden in the shadow of a wide-brimmed hat. Occasionally, his eyes quietly turn towards the girl, as if trying to recognize something. When Lucia looks up for the second time, the bench is empty. The sky changes color, the sunlight fading and then disappearing completely. The birds chirp sparsely. A few children ride their bikes past, their laughter echoing in the empty space. Lucia puts her sketchbook away, stands up and brushes off the dust. She looks at her watch, almost 6 o'clock. She decides to head home. But the next scene, if anyone had seen it, could only have been viewed through a security camera mounted on the corner of the street. But that camera had been broken for 3 years, and no one had thought to repair it. Lucia Rivera doesn't return. No one sees her walk down the small street leading home. No one sees her leave the park. No one hears a cry for help, nor are there any signs of a struggle or strange footprints, as if she had vanished into everyday life on a summer afternoon that was far too peaceful. Evening descends on the apartment as if someone deliberately poured darkness into every corner. Elena sits alone at the dining table. In front of her is the empty space where Lucia usually sits every evening, quietly picking at her food as if fulfilling an obligation. By now, the clock reads 9:47 p.m., 6 hours since Lucia said she would be back. Elena still hasn't called anyone. She thinks the girl is probably just having fun. She'll finish her dinner and then clean the house. But then something holds her back, a slight nagging feeling. Finally, she gets up and walks towards the landline phone. Her fingers trace each number, carefully as if trying to open an old lock. The first call, Sarah, Lucia's classmate. "Is this Ms. Elena?" "No, I haven't seen her since Tuesday. Or was it Monday?" She seemed tired then. The second call, a boy named Mateo, who used to walk Lucia home after drawing class. "Has she gone back to her hometown? I thought she said she was going to." Each call ends, leaving Elena with a new emptiness, not because of a lack of information, but because of the realization that no one really knows where Lucia has gone, or even noticed she's disappeared. Only when the clock hands reach 12 does she pick up the phone and call the police. "My daughter hasn't come home." "How long has it been, ma'am?" 6 hours. "How old is she?" 17. "What's her name?" "Lucia Rivera." "Did anyone argue with her? Were there any signs of anything unusual?" Her voice is monotonous, as if reading a shopping list. "No. No one. No signs." The police officer takes notes, his voice responding after summarizing the information. For now, we'll record this as a case of running away from home. We'll create a file. If anything unusual happens, please report it." She puts the phone down very gently, as if afraid of awakening something dormant within her. Outside the window, the darkness is deeper, and every sound in the neighborhood suddenly becomes suspicious. The next morning, Elena brings two things to the police station: a photo of Lucia smiling and an old leather-bound sketchbook, the sketchbook she used to use a few years ago. No one asked for them. She's not even sure why she brought them. She just feels that if no one is searching, at least there needs to be something representing her existence. The front desk officer, a young woman with her hair in a high bun, looks at Elena with undisguised suspicion. Her voice is slightly emphasized in an unpleasant way. "You're the girl's stepmother?" Elena nods. No further explanation. "We'll keep the photo. As for the sketchbook, we don't need it, ma'am." Elena places it on the table. She might have drawn the last place she went. The officer shrugs. Elena leaves without saying anything more. But as she walks out the door, she feels a silent gaze following her. Not suspicion of a criminal, but suspicion of a mother's character. On the way home, Elena stops at the small market near her house to buy coffee. As she's choosing a package, a familiar voice rings out behind her. "Are you sure she didn't just run away?" It's Mrs. Ramirez, the neighbor who lives on the floor below, famous for knowing everyone's business except her own. Elena turns around, her gaze calmly cold. No response, just a slight nod, then she leaves. She knows the gaze is still there behind her, like a layer of fine dust clinging to her clothes. That night, in the silent house, Elena opens the bookcase and pulls out a dust-covered photo album. The cover is cracked, the leather edges peeling. She places it on the table, turns on the desk lamp, the soft yellow light as gentle as an old breath. There are photos from when Lucia was little, with short hair, smiling innocently next to her father, a man with curly hair and always tired eyes. There are photos of the three of them at the Dia de los Muertos festival, Lucia hugging her neck, her cheek smeared with white and red paint. They're smiling, really smiling. Elena touches that photo, the blurred outlines under her fingers, and for the first time since receiving the news that Lucia hadn't returned, she cries. Not loudly, not complaining, just silent tears flowing down, carrying with them things never said. That she was once afraid of the role of stepmother, afraid that loving too much would make Lucia hate her. That she once had a child of her own, who died at the age of 3, and from then on could not sleep in a nursery. That Lucia is not her daughter, but the only person who makes her feel she still has a reason to stay. But no one knows that, except for herself. Alejandro Torres lives on the southern edge of the city, a small, tidy house filled with old books and case files closed long ago. He is a former police officer, retired early due to a spinal injury, but has never truly rested. Every morning he makes coffee, opens the window to catch the faint light, and rereads the notes from his years in the force. Lately, he's been working as a private investigator for a few families, people who no longer believe in the system but still need someone to listen. Last week, a middle-aged couple came to see him. They sat across from him, their hands tightly intertwined, their eyes red but their voices still retaining a calm, even steely demeanor. Her name is Isabel, 18 years old, missing while riding her bike home from tutoring. No one saw anything. No cameras, no traces. Alejandro nods cautiously. He's heard many similar stories, but something in the way the father sat still, his hands on his knees as if trying to steady his mind, made a deep impression on him. "What did the police say?" he asks. "Maybe she ran away from home. It's a rebellious age." The mother is bitter. She wouldn't run away. Her phone, wallet, everything was still in her backpack. Alejandro agrees to take the case. The look in the father's eyes, the look that had been on his own face many years ago when his sister disappeared and was found too late. He starts from the last place Isabel was seen, a small road near the old urban area, lined with deteriorating four-story buildings. Rain makes the sidewalk slippery, but Alejandro still stoops down, taking photos of the cracks, the side passages, the hidden corners where someone could hide. He uses a pencil lead protruding from his sleeve, making notes in small handwriting on the back of the maps. No cameras, rusty iron gates, bicycle not found. Strangely, when reviewing his notes that evening, he recognizes a familiar feeling. The details, no witnesses, no cameras, location near an abandoned park, resemble another case he had read somewhere. He turns on his computer and searches for old files saved from his time in the police force. In a folder called Silence Unsolved Disappearances, he finds 4 reports. All of them are girls aged 15 to 19 who disappeared in recent years, all in old residential areas near dilapidated buildings. And in one of those files, the name appears clearly, Lucia Rivera, 17 years old. He pauses for a long time. His finger taps lightly on the screen as if trying to awaken a memory. An attached photo, the girl with long hair, deep eyes, and a light brown sweater. Looking at the photo, Alejandro can't help but shudder. There's something very silent about her, as if even in the photo, she's already somewhere else. He prints the file, pins it to the board, and underlines Lucia's name. Then, the next morning, he takes a bus to the area where she used to live. The small park in the residential area is quiet, as if forgotten by time. Sparse banyan trees, moss-covered park benches, and a dark stone wall where Lucia used to draw. Alejandro walks slowly around, observing the space as if rereading an old book. On the wall, a few drawings remain. The chalk has faded, but something hasn't disappeared. A window frame, a figure standing with their back turned, small circles resembling raindrops. He stares at the wall, speechless. Something touches him, not because of the drawing technique, but because of the gentle sadness clinging to each stroke. He takes photos, then continues to walk around. The nearby grocery store is still open, a small shop with dusty candy shelves and an elderly shopkeeper wearing thick glasses. "I remember that girl," the man says when Alejandro shows him the photo. "She always bought red soda. Quiet, but polite. Missing for a few months now, right?" Alejandro nods. The man's eyes become clouded, as if something is emerging from the past. "It's strange," he murmurs. "A few days after that, someone came asking about her. A young woman, not her mother. Didn't say clearly who she was either. I asked, and she just smiled and said she was looking for something she left behind." Alejandro leans forward slightly. "What thing?" "Don't know. But that day, after she left, I was cleaning the shelves and found a small piece of paper stuck under a jar of peppermint candies. I was going to throw it away, but then I forgot." "Do you still have it?" The man turns around and rummages through the drawer. A moment later, he brings out a crumpled piece of paper, so thin it looks like it was once wet. Alejandro opens it. A single line, handwritten in blue ink. "Blue ink, please don't forget." His heart skips a beat. Slightly slanted handwriting, soft rounded strokes, not like a normal note, more like a cry for help or a signal. The sentence is short, but full of hidden meaning. Blue ink, like the ink Lucia often used to sign her drawings. Please don't forget. Not a reproach, but a heartfelt request. He carefully folds the paper and puts it in his jacket pocket. It starts to rain again, like a reminder that not all traces are washed away. There are things, even just small lines of text, that can pull a person back from the invisible. That night, Alejandro sits in his old room in front of the bulletin board with photos, maps, and victims' names. He uses red pins to connect Lucia to Isabel, then to the other 2 missing persons cases. The 4 points form an almost symmetrical shape around the old industrial area. For the first time in weeks, he finds himself holding his breath without realizing it, the only thought echoing in his head. Maybe Lucia hasn't disappeared. Maybe she's still there, somewhere, waiting for someone to find her. Alejandro Torres is sitting amidst piles of old files at the city archive, the fluorescent lights flickering above him as if trying to emphasize the fatigue weighing down his eyelids. His gnarled hands are turning the pages of old records, making notes in the shaky handwriting of local police from nearly a decade ago. The name Julian Mendez doesn't appear in any official reports. Not charged with any crime. No convictions. No written accusations. But as Alejandro pieces together fragments of notes from scattered missing persons cases, a student who dropped out of school midway, a woman who attended private drawing classes and then suddenly moved houses, that name gradually emerges like an ink stain on white paper, not clear, but impossible to ignore. He finds an old file mistakenly pinned to the school property category. A resignation letter, neat handwriting, stating the reason as unstable mental health. Signed, Julian Mendez. Only when he reads this line does Alejandro look up for a long time, his eyes fixed on that name. Not because it stood out, but because it had been hidden too cleverly for so many years. A person not forgotten, just no one dared to mention. He closes the file, and he knows where he should start. The school is at the end of an old road lined with old trees, the rusty iron gates ajar. He stops the car, enters under the thin rain, looking around. Time has changed many things. The classrooms have been repainted, some old buildings have been demolished. But that atmosphere, the feeling that someone once observed from a dark corner, is still there. An old security guard is on the morning shift, sparse gray hair, a blue jacket worn at the elbows. He looks at Alejandro with eyes both suspicious and tired. "I didn't do anything wrong," he says first, as if out of defensive habit. "I'm not here to accuse either," Alejandro replies, showing his private badge and Julian's photo. "Just need a few minutes to talk. Do you remember this person?" The security guard stares. His eyes gradually change from defensive to thoughtful. A very long silence. "He taught here for 6 years," he says softly. "Never raised his voice, never scolded. The teachers even praised him for being gentle with the students. But," Alejandro prompts, "but he used to watch. Not the way a man looks at a woman, but like they were statues, stiff, emotionless. Every time there was an art class, I'd walk by and see him standing behind the girls, not touching them, but watching every hand movement, for a long, long time. Then he'd take notes." "Writing what?" "No one knows. His notebook was locked. He only wrote in blue ink. I once jokingly asked. He just laughed. I like looking at things that aren't finished." The security guard pauses for a moment. "There was an accusation the last year he was here." Alejandro looks up. The parents of a female student found out that she couldn't sleep for many nights in a row, scribbling on the walls with faceless figures. "They questioned her," the girl cried. "Said Teacher Julian made her scared. But no touching, nothing clear, just the eyes. The school didn't want trouble. He withdrew." End of story. Alejandro thanks him. On the way out, he feels cold, not because of the rain, but because the fact that there was no specific behavior, but still left a clear darkness. That afternoon, he finds an old address in the file, the house where Julian used to open a private drawing class for teenagers. Now closed, the sign peeling, the windows sealed. But in a small note, he discovers the names of 2 students who used to attend long-term, Angela Munoz and Camila Reynoso. Both had disappeared, one for 3 days, one for 5 weeks. When they returned, no one could question them. They just said, "Got lost," and never returned to that drawing class. Alejandro tracks down Angela's address. She now lives in a working-class apartment building near the train station. He knocks on the door of room 3B. No one answers the first time. The second time, the door opens slightly, and a woman in her late 20s, her eyes darkening when she sees him. "I just have a few questions about Julian Mendez." Angela is silent, then shakes her head. "You don't understand him." She closes the door decisively, the sound of the bolt locking behind her like an end. Alejandro stands in front of the door for a few more seconds, then takes out a small piece of paper, writes a message by hand. "If you want to talk, I'll come back." Then quietly leaves. That night, returning to his office, he turns on his computer, enters all the locations of the missing persons cases. Lucia Rivera, Isabel Peña, Camila Reynoso, Ángela Muñoz. 4 points, lying on the map like spreading ink stains. He pulls the map back, connects the points, draws the area of intersection. All roads lead to the forest southeast of Guadalajara, an old ecological area that has been abandoned after a major fire 8 years ago. No one goes there anymore. But in the middle of the unsupervised roads, no lights, no signals, is an area that no one mentions. He remembers the security guard's words, things that aren't finished. Maybe that's what Julian is hunting, not people, but the moments in between adulthood and childhood, between stability and fracture. And he doesn't take everything. He knows when to give back, not to spare, but to erase traces, to make everything look like it never happened. A predator doesn't need force, just eyes and patience. Alejandro feels cold all over when he turns off the screen. Angela's voice echoes in his head. You don't understand him. But he's starting to understand, and that scares him. Not afraid of Julian, but afraid of the people who have never seen him. The attic room where Lucia is being held is small, low-ceilinged, and smells strongly of damp. The walls are peeling. The window is sealed with a wire mesh, with only a small gap to let the smell of rain in, making the air in the room always thick and wet, as if the house itself is breathing in water vapor. Lucia sits huddled under an old blanket, her eyes fixed on the faint streak of light filtering through the gap in the curtains. It has been raining all week, rain that seems to cover everything with a thin, blurry, and silent layer of fabric. Time here is no longer measured in hours, but in the steady sound of falling drops, in the footsteps up the stairs every Tuesday evening, the only time the door is opened, and the man with the silent eyes gives her some food, some water, a few rolls of drawing paper. Julian doesn't speak. He just looks, his eyes as if observing a rare species on the verge of extinction, not a human being. It is precisely because of this silence that Lucia is more afraid than of any threat. In the darkness, she hides the old phone, the one she found in a pile of old things behind the false wall. The machine is almost broken, but it can still record video. The battery is weak, there is no signal, but it can still record. And Lucia starts recording. She records short clips, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, carefully hidden in the machine's settings. Each clip focuses on a detail. The corner of the left curtain has a crescent-shaped tear, a small pot of wild plants growing at the foot of the wall, only green when it rains enough days. The sound of a distant train ringing at dusk. A ray of afternoon light shining diagonally through the wooden slats, illuminating a patch of white lime. Things that seem random, but if anyone pays attention and is patient enough, they will understand that it is a map. She hides the phone in the largest painting, a canvas covering almost one wall. The painting is in shades of blue-gray, an image of a damp forest, almost a copy of the emotion of the place where she is locked up. She tears the canvas inside, attaches the machine to the wooden frame, then glues it back, stitching with thin thread, the stitches as meticulous as the lines on a sketch of a person's life. Once, when Julian was moving things from the outhouse behind the house, where the old paintings and broken easels were stored, he missed some items, perhaps out of carelessness, or because he thought he would come back. But it started raining heavily, and the old warehouse behind began to collapse. A group of builders from the nearby construction site passed by. They needed a few boards to keep out the rain. Seeing the pile of garbage piled up, they pulled out a few pieces of wood, a few old pieces of painting. A thick, dark-colored canvas, unusually heavy, caught their attention. While turning it over, A young man used a knife to cut the corner of the fabric and discovered that the wooden frame behind it was empty. The phone rolled out, falling into the mud. He picked it up, cleaned it, and curiously turned it on. The machine turned on. Only part of the screen lit up, but there was a stored video icon. When he pressed play, the whole group of workers stopped. On the screen was an image of a girl, long hair, sitting against the wall, dim light, pale face, but very clear eyes. She was looking directly at the viewer. "Hello," the voice whispered hoarsely. "If you see this, please don't ignore it." That afternoon, the group of workers brought the phone to the local police station. They didn't know the exact content, but they were afraid it was related to something serious. While waiting for confirmation, a woman entered the station, Laura Rivera. She came to a meeting about a coordination campaign between administrative districts. No one noticed when she walked past the screen that was being played. But just a few seconds later, she stopped, turned sharply. Her eyes were glued to the frame. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. "Stop the video," she said, her voice trembling. "Rewind 5 seconds. Let me see the girl's face." The screen clearly showed Lucia's face, different, thinner, paler, but it was her. Laura almost couldn't stand up. "This is my niece," she whispered. "It's Lucia Rivera." That night, Alejandro received a call. When he arrived, it was still raining. The police gave him the phone, and he took it home, placed it in the middle of the table, in a room lit by soft yellow light amidst maps and files. He watched each video clip again, stopping at each detail, thick, coarse curtains, only found in old houses before 1980. The corner of the brick revealed behind the foot of the wall, a typical pattern for the southeastern edge. The sound of the train. He recorded it and compared it to the map of the tracks. He measured the light flashing through the curtain gap, orienting the sun, thereby inferring the direction of the window, counted the number of seconds from the light to the echo, determined the height of the floor, listened to the sound of the wind, the birds, the sound of water hitting metal. Each thing became an anchor for him to build up the picture. An attic, a west-facing window, not far from the old railway. Each video clip is a message, not with words, but with intuition, with details as small as a whisper in a dream. Lucia has not given up. And now, it's his turn not to give up. Meanwhile, in the damp attic, Lucia continues to act in the hope that someone out there will hear her cries for help. She secretly takes out a small piece of mirror, which she had hidden under the bottom from several weeks ago when found in a wooden box containing broken paintbrushes. She knows Julian doesn't pay attention to that item, too small, too meaningless to him, but for Lucia, it is the door. She sits quietly, waiting for the afternoon light to shine diagonally through the window frame. Then she places the mirror, skillfully adjusting the angle, to reflect the light onto the wall. A flash. 2 flashes. Stop. Then repeat. No one taught her Morse code, but the instinct for survival creates its own language, incomplete, but with rules. A long light is the letter L. 2 shorts are U. She doesn't hope anyone will read it, but she needs to leave something, a sign that she is alive, that she is calling. At the same time, in his office, Alejandro Torres is glued to the screen. He fast-forwards and rewinds each video Lucia recorded. Not finding anything more in the images, he switches to sound, plugging in professional headphones, opening noise-filtering software, something he used in kidnapping investigations when he was in the force. He magnifies the sound frequency spectrum, searching for each frequency, removing the sound of wind, breathing, movement, to leave only the distant background sounds. In the 12th video, on the 30th night, he hears the sound of a train whistle. Not clear, but special, not the sound of a normal passenger train. The sound is low, drawn out, with a very characteristic metallic echo. He extracts the frequency, 356 Hz, then compares it to the sound data of the types of locomotives that have operated in Guadalajara in the last 3 years. The results narrow down to only one line, the steel transport line, running every night from the old San Pedro shipyard to the industrial warehouse in the north. A single trip, departing at 0:40 a.m. He marks the intersection between that route and the undeveloped land. Not much, only 3 areas. But one of them is on the list of private land no longer registered as officially owned. The address in the name of Julian Mendez. Laura, upon receiving the news, immediately went to the local land registry. After 2 hours of rummaging through the dusty files, she confirmed that the land used to be the old workshop of the Mendez family, which stopped operating in 2003, but was not transferred. Nearby is a row of 3-story buildings that have been abandoned. No one lives there, but according to the map, the structure is still intact. She calls Alejandro. "You need to go there, immediately." It is raining lightly when Alejandro stops the car on the edge of the land. He does not drive in, for fear of attracting attention. Instead, he crosses the weeds, circles the edge of the patchy forest, then stops at a high point, taking out his binoculars. The building appears, dark in the damp mist. No lights, no open doors. But on the second floor, a small window has a white curtain. Old, thick fabric, wrinkled as if it has been washed many times. And when he looks closely, light flashes. Once, then twice, then stop, then 3 times intermittently. He stops breathing. Not a light, not a random reflection. It's a signal. Not as regular as real Morse code, but enough to see the intention. Someone in that room is trying to communicate. Alejandro returns to the car, opens the map, records the angle of reflection, the direction of the light, compares it with the time of sunset. He draws a positioning triangle on the map. The center is the attic room on the 2nd floor. Lucia is there. Inside, Lucia drops the mirror, her hand shaking. She doesn't know if anyone saw, doesn't know if anyone understood, but she did her best. She sits down on the floor, back against the wall, her eyes closed. And in a distant place, someone just put down the binoculars while taking out the phone to call. "Laura, call the support team. I know where Lucia is." 2 people who have never met, never said a word, but are now talking through lights, sounds, and fragile faith. A wordless dialogue, but vital. Julian Mendez sits quietly in front of the easel. No brush in his hand, nor is he painting. He just looks, his eyes, silent, bright, and empty, are fixed on the unfinished portrait. A young woman with an indistinct face, hair loose, bare shoulders, her eyes as if waiting for something that she herself does not know. The cassette tape plays slowly in the tape recorder placed next to the chair. His voice, even expressionless, like an interview with himself. Art, if it is truly art, must be kept out of the hands of people. Society is filth. Every time someone puts an ethical label on a drawing, they've killed it. A small scratch. The recorder continues. He puts his feet on the edge of the table, continuing his monologue. Lucia. She doesn't understand that she's part of the most beautiful thing. Not yet. But the time will come when she doesn't need light anymore. Then, that's when I'll complete the final touch. He pauses. A long, light breath. Not emotional, just a necessary silence. He gets up, walks around the wide room, silent as a tomb. On the walls hang paintings, most unfinished. A few are copies of the pictures Lucia once drew, edited, cut, and pasted. Others are sketches from memory. Her eyes when she was still skeptical, then when she started sitting longer, not asking anymore. He stops in front of a picture, tapping lightly on the frame. This is when she was still resisting. The brushstrokes shake, the colors are too safe. There's no vitality. Taking a few more steps, his hand sweeps across another frame. And here, when she started listening, not to me, but to the room, she feels its rhythm now. His mouth twitches slightly. He opens the cabinet, takes out a small, old, dusty camera. It is the camera he used to hide on the rafters of Lucia's room, to monitor the light, composition, behavior. He reviews the last clip. the image shaking slightly, the angle tilted but still clear enough. He sees the light flashing from the mirror. His eyes narrow. Not much, just a few seconds. But that reflected light is not random. There is rhythm. There is a pause. There is something like language. In addition to that is the girl's eyes. Those eyes have changed, no longer lost nor completely resigned, but like she is waiting. He turns off the machine, silence, and closes his eyes. The girl is talking, not to him, but to someone outside. Late in the afternoon, he puts on his coat and walks around the house. The Tlajomulco forest surrounds three sides, the other side bordering a bare hill. The grass is wet, the soil is soft. He bends down, his fingers lightly touching the surface of the ground, looking for traces. He doesn't even know what he's looking for, but there is an unease in his heart, as if the air has just been stirred slightly by someone. He looks up, his eyes towards the top of the hill, from where, if you know where to look, you can see straight into the window of Lucia's room. In the past, he had chosen to turn the door towards that side because he thought no one had enough reason to approach from that side. One side is a bare hill, steep and slippery, and there is nothing to cover it. It is irrational for anyone to get close. But now, he stands there, in the silent late afternoon, and sees that the mistake is not that someone appeared. The mistake is, he feels he is being looked back at. Without saying anything, he turns around and goes in. Lucia doesn't hear anything unusual. She is still quietly in the room, the small mirror put back in her pocket. She doesn't dare to use it too often, afraid of being discovered. But her heart still beats fast every time she thinks of the idea. If someone is looking in, if that light is really seen by someone, she doesn't know, and can't know, that downstairs, Julian has locked another bolt on the door. He goes upstairs, the heavy footsteps stepping on each old wooden step, causing the floor to shake slightly. The door of Lucia's room creaks softly as he pushes it in. She startles and turns around, her frightened eyes following, like a fledgling bird that has learned that every movement of his signals something bad. But today, he doesn't shout, doesn't scold, doesn't utter a word, just quietly enters, like a shadow in human form. He doesn't look at her once, goes straight to the window, where the white curtain is still hanging loosely, with a little of the last day's light still flowing through the fabric. He raises his hand, removes each hook of fabric from the hanger, the movement strangely slow, almost gentle, as if removing a part of the memory from the room. Then he folds the curtain in half, then in quarters, hugging it close to his chest as if holding a fragile object. Only when turning to leave does he stop. His eyes quietly stop at the wall opposite, the place where small spots of light like code once flashed. No frown, no question, just look for a long time, like someone who has understood, and now decides to end. The door closes without a sound. Lucia is still sitting on the bed, back against the wall, her hands clenching each other in her heart. The room is noticeably darker. No curtains, no mirror, nothing left to reflect or transmit. She looks up at the empty wall of light. In a moment, it is no longer fear, but a dry silence, colder than any night ever passed. The game has changed the rules, and she has no way to speak. As for him, he has just regained the right to monologue. That morning, Lucia Rivera woke up because of the cold. No light, no familiar sound of water dripping from the gutter. The attic room is so silent that she can clearly hear the sound of blood flowing in her ears, a deep and steady vibration, like a drum calling back something lost. No more curtains, no more reflections, no way to send signals. She slowly sat up, her hand touching the cold wooden floor. The pillow was damp, the blanket was not warm enough. The smell of mildew seemed to be mixed with the smell of flesh, the smell of time. She looked around. Everything was as before, and also no longer itself, as if the room had swallowed something she once clung to, the belief that someone was listening. Lucia dragged herself to the door. She didn't shout, That had been tried before, but this time she knocked. Lightly first, then harder, then hit with both hands. No one answers. She put her ear against the wood, only hearing a very distant wind, not from outside, but from somewhere inside herself. She can no longer hear clearly what she is hoping for anymore. To be saved? To hear a human voice? Or just to be sure that she still exists? She sits down, leaning against the wall, her head tilted to one side. The wall is cold, colder than usual, as if the room has also chosen to abandon her. Downstairs, Julian Mendez stands in front of the kitchen window, holding a white ceramic cup with a small crack near the handle. He doesn't drink, doesn't move, just rotates the cup between his palms, as if considering what to do with it. Keep it, throw it away, or break it. His eyes look outside, not clear where. The forest behind the house is dense, but today it seems he no longer believes in its protection. He walks around the house, closing more bolts, lowering the wooden shutters against the windows. Not hasty, not angry, just slowly, steadily, as if he has done it many times before, as if he is cleaning up. Then he goes upstairs, stops in front of Lucia's room, silent for a moment, reaches out to touch the new door bolt, as if to be sure. Doesn't open it, just presses his ear against the wood. 1 second, 2 seconds, no sound. He turns away, quietly. 2 kilometers away, in the forest, patchy with mist, Alejandro and Laura stand under the light rain falling like spiderwebs. In their hands are the house plans, redrawn from memory, from old maps, and from the night vision the night before. Laura looks around. No guards, no cameras. Alejandro shakes his head. Those things aren't necessary, because he knows this location is isolated enough. Are you sure about the location of the room? Alejandro doesn't answer immediately. He looks up, seeing the top of the house peeking through the dense trees. Gray roof tiles, a corner with signs of patching with corrugated iron, red rust mixed with the gloomy sky. I'm sure about the light, about the sound of the train, about the direction the curtains used to reflect. Laura looks at him, her eyes as if filled with the storm that is yet to break. But if you're wrong, I know, Alejandro interrupts. If I'm wrong, I will take full responsibility. But if I'm right and don't do anything, then that girl will die in the dark. He doesn't need to say more. Laura nods. Both retreat, heading towards the forest alley, starting to call the support team using a private frequency. No search warrant. No time to wait for a warrant. In the attic room, Lucia doesn't sleep. She also doesn't cry. The tears have run dry since the early days. What remains is a wordless emptiness. She looks into the darkness in front of her, sometimes feeling like someone is looking back. A small explosion rings out in her brain, not from the outside, but a feeling of the body warning itself, that if she doesn't think of something to believe in, then even her breath will leave her. But there is nothing to cling to, just a room, a wall, and a silence that she knows is not due to a lack of sound, but because there is no one on the other side to hear. In just 15 minutes, the house will be surrounded. But Lucia doesn't know that. She only knows. Today, for the first time, she no longer believes that anyone will come. Alejandro Torres hunches down, crawling low under the acacia fence, the small flashlight flickering in his hand, trembling with cold and anxiety. Beside him, Laura is breathing heavily, mud reaching her ankles, but not a word of complaint. Both have been waiting for this moment for 3 long months, and now they are only a few steps away from the truth. The house in front of them is strangely silent. No lights, no kitchen smoke, no movement. Alejandro signals with his hand. 5 minutes of observation. Laura nods slightly, then turns to the left, heading towards the porch, intentionally knocking over a rotten tin pot, the dry sound echoing in the rain. Alejandro quietly circles around to the back. The back door is not locked from the outside, only bolted from the inside. He pulls out a small iron bar, prying it open gently. The hinges creak softly. the sound like a razor blade scraping against flesh. He sneaks in, his hand gripping the old pistol tightly. All senses are as taut as a bowstring. Upstairs, Lucia startles awake when she hears the wooden floor creaking. Not the familiar footsteps, not the way Julian usually walks. She freezes. In the thick darkness, her heart beats as if it wants to explode out of her chest. A glimmer of hope. Or a new danger. Alejandro steps cautiously up the stairs, the flashlight scanning the damp wooden wall. "Lucia," he whispers, "if you can hear me, don't panic. I've come to take you home." Suddenly, a noise from the next room. The door opens slightly. A figure appears, tall and thin, a crumpled shirt stained with paint. His right hand is holding a long knife, the cold steel gleaming in the darkness. It's Julian. Alejandro turns sharply, raising the gun, but not firing. The two men face each other in the narrow hallway, only a few meters apart. No one moves. Julian appeared in the narrow hallway, his hand holding the long knife tightly. His hair matted with sweat and rain, his eyes wide open, shining with the look that Alejandro recognized immediately. Not panic, but excitement. "You think you understand?" He smiles, slowly walking towards him. "I've created a space where no one judges, a clean place, not dirty like those people out there." Alejandro raises the gun, not shaking, but his hand is tense. "Stop, Julian. Drop the knife. You're finished." "Oh, I know." He nods, then laughs loudly, a sudden, out-of-sync laugh, sounding like a saw screeching through rotten wood. But finished for whom? And then he lunges, without shouting, without warning. The knife in his hand slashes a narrow path towards Alejandro's chest. He dodges in time, backing close to the wall, the gun swinging up but not firing. Can't. The hallway is too narrow. A stray shot will hit Lucia inside. They struggle. The knife scratches Alejandro's sleeve, cutting a thin line on his arm. Blood gushes out hotly, but he still maintains his balance, using the gun barrel to hit Julian's shoulder, causing him to stagger. A "stay put" rings from the bottom of the stairs. Laura appears, gun at the ready. Julian stops, his hands still raised in a half-attacking posture. His face is distorted with anger, with his arrogance being shattered. "Drop the weapon," Alejandro growls each word, blood dripping onto the floor. "Your twisted act is over." 1 second, 2 seconds. Then Julian throws the knife down, the blade hitting the wooden floor with a cold, sharp sound. He raises his hands, slowly, like a final act closing the curtain. "Go ahead," he breathes, tired. "But don't think you've saved anything." The forest rain has stopped, but the air in the Tlajomulco forest still carries a damp fragrance, like the flesh of a person still trembling with cold. Inside the wooden house, Julian Mendez kneels on the wooden floor that has peeled paint, his hands locked behind his back. Laura stands behind, not saying anything, hand holding the handcuffs, face expressionless. No need for force, no need to shout. He doesn't resist, doesn't speak, doesn't look at anyone. Just like an actor who has just let go after the finale. Who knows that the stage has gone dark? Alejandro Torres stands at the foot of the stairs. In his hand is no longer a gun, only the flashlight that has dimmed. He looks up, takes a deep breath, then steps up. Each old step creaks under his feet, no longer carrying the sound of lurking, but the sound of returning. He touches the attic doorknob, turning it gently. The door opens slightly. The attic room is not completely dark, even though there is no light. The roof leaks, pale rain-colored light seeping through the small holes. Damp wooden walls. The space echoes with the smell of old paint, moldy fabric, and time that cannot breathe. Lucia sits in the corner of the room, back against the wall. Her long hair is matted with water from the leaking roof. She is hugging an old piece of fabric, a piece of crumpled curtain that she used to send light. Her hand clutches it tightly as if it is the last piece of memory that is still real. Alejandro stands in the doorway. He doesn't step in right away. The flashlight in his hand shines on one side of her cheek, thin, pale, and immobile. Lucia turns her head to look at him, doesn't run to him, doesn't call for help, just looks, for a long time, as if trying to distinguish between a human and an illusion. "Are you really here to save me?" she asks. Her voice is hoarse, but clear. Alejandro nods, his eyes sting. He doesn't know what to say first, but then he finds the most important thing, the thing that brought him here. "I'm someone who used to be a father," he says, "and today I come because I refuse to lose another child." Lucia doesn't cry. She just stands up, slowly, staggering. Her eyes still don't leave him. Then, as after a very personal decision, she walks towards him, her legs shaking, but not stopping. When the distance is only a breath, she throws herself into his arms, not bursting into tears, not sobbing, just sighing, very softly. "I thought I was forgotten." Alejandro says nothing. He just puts his arms around her, hugging her like someone hugging back the child who was lost in some dream and for the first time dares to believe she is still alive. Laura leads Lucia out of the house. The outside light is pale silver, shining on the waterlogged ground with the first streaks of light after the rain. Outside the door, a police car has just arrived, belatedly, as usual in the most heartbreaking stories. The back door opens, and from inside, Elena steps down. She doesn't shout Lucia's name, doesn't run over like in the movies. She just stands there, hands covering her face, trembling, then slowly lowering her hands, revealing a tear-streaked face. When the eyes of the two people meet, there is a pause. Lucia stops. Elena bites her lip. Neither knows what to say, but then, almost at the same time, they walk quickly towards each other, not asking, "Are you okay?" or "I'm sorry." Just a hug, strong, long, and real. Elena cries like she has never cried, and Lucia still doesn't shed a tear, but her hand clutches her stepmother tightly, as if all the distance in many years has vanished along with that curtain. In the ambulance, Lucia is given a preliminary examination. Alejandro sits next to her, holding her hand lightly. "Thank you," she whispers. Alejandro shakes his head. "You were the one who spoke out, with light, with sound. You were the one who called us here." Lucia looks out the window. The rain has stopped. The forest trees are covered in water, shining like metal. For the first time, she breathes deeply without being afraid. In her heart, the darkness doesn't disappear immediately, but light has entered, enough to make room for hope to grow. 2 months have passed since the day the wooden house in the Tlajomulco forest was surrounded. People have written about Lucia Rivera, in the newspapers, in the everyday life section. There is even a podcast about the case, a few lines on Twitter, debates about legal loopholes and the insensitivity of the system. But then, like everything else, public opinion fades away. While the real people, the people who have stepped through that dark area, still remain, each with a pain that can no longer be named, but still have to live with it as they live with a scar. Lucia sits in a painting therapy session on a Tuesday morning at the Community Psychology Center. Small room, white walls, simple color palette, the faint smell of diluted watercolors. She doesn't say much, doesn't communicate with anyone, but still comes regularly every week. On her easel is a canvas that is almost blank. There is only a blue dot in the left corner, no lines, no forms. The instructor asks, "What is that?" Lucia shakes her head. "Don't know, just a color I remember." She doesn't say more, but in her mind, she remembers the old piece of fabric she used as a signal. Remember the light reflecting into the mirror. Remember even the time when there was no light to send. And that blue, a color between rain and tears, is the only thing she keeps from that dark road. She is not ready to redraw everything. But a dot of color is a starting point. At the small apartment where the two mothers and daughters live, Elena is struggling with a batch of lasagna that has just burned around the edges. She opens YouTube, fast-forwards, and rewinds the instructions, then sighs. The second time this week. The second time it has burned. But she is not annoyed, does not give up. Lucia used to like this dish, but Elena had never learned how to cook, never asked her stepdaughter what style she liked to eat. They had lived together as two tenants sharing a house, quietly, properly, distantly. The fault is not on one side, but she is the adult, and this time, she doesn't allow herself to give up anymore. She puts the tray back on the stove, adjusts the temperature lower, wiping her hands on a newly purchased apron. For the first time, in many years, is an apron with embroidered flowers. Alejandro Torres is invited to the city police office. People want him to be an official advisor to the Missing Persons Investigation Unit, which will coordinate many departments, have its own budget, have influence. He sits opposite the new commanding officer, listening, nodding, smiling. "You are the right person," they say, "because you used to be a father, used to save a child by intuition, without the need for the system." Alejandro looks out the window, his hand resting lightly on the half-finished box of cigarettes in his pocket. "Thank you," he says, "but I don't want to investigate anymore. I just want to be a listener." The commanding officer is surprised. Alejandro smiles slightly. "I have spent my whole life searching, tracking, analyzing. Now I want to listen to those who are left behind, like the fathers, the mothers, who have not been listened to from the start." He stands up, shakes hands, then leaves the brightly lit room. On the way home, the weather starts to be sunny. Julian Mendez is brought to trial in a closed hearing. No media, no audience. No one cries, nor does anyone shout. Only files, evidence, video clips from Lucia's phone, and a dry psychological assessment. The defendant has signs of deviant behavior, showing unsympathetic personality behavior, but has sufficient awareness to understand the wrongdoing. The defendant is sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. No one says he is crazy, and so he is sentenced as a normal person. No one is happy, no one is sad, just the truth. Late on a Friday afternoon, Lucia sits in her private room. She has returned to school, temporarily studying online. She doesn't want to say much, but every day she spends an hour writing, not a diary, not homework, just a black notebook. The first page is written with purple ink. "Things I never told Mom." She hasn't given Elena to read. Maybe never give it. Maybe one day. But the important thing is that she has written, not to blame, but to remember that she used to keep everything inside for too long, and now, if there is a chance to live again, the first thing to do is start talking, with hands, with eyes, with blue, with timely silence. Outside the window, the weather is still gloomy but brighter. A sparrow sits on the ledge, trembling in the light breeze, then flies away. And in the room, Lucia continues to write, the lines that are never sent but no longer kept in the dark. There are unspoken fears and calls that are never answered, not because no one hears, but because no one believes it is real. The story you just read is not entirely fictional. It is built from real disappearances that have happened in many places, over many years. Character names, locations, and some details have been changed to protect the safety and identity of those involved. But the emotions, the silence, and the desire to survive are all real. If you have come with us to these last lines, perhaps you also understand that. There are things that should not be buried just because they are difficult to face. There are stories that need to be retold, so that people who have been silent know that their voices still have value. If this story makes you stop for a moment to think, please share it via WhatsApp with a friend, relative, or anyone you believe needs to be reminded that there are still small lights finding their way out of the darkness, that sometimes a shared message can also be a door, We cannot listen for others, but we can listen with them. Please send this story. Who knows, somewhere, someone is waiting to believe that they have not been forgotten. A 17-year-old girl vanishes during a seemingly peaceful summer afternoon. No cries for help, no traces, no witnesses. Everyone calls it a case of running away from home. No one searches, no one waits. But then, amidst a pile of decaying paintings in an abandoned house, an old phone is found, containing blurry videos, and a trembling voice whispers, "Please don't forget." It's not just a cry for help. It's the first clue leading to a truth that everyone has chosen to turn away from. Guadalajara is bathed in the shimmering twilight of a stifling summer day.